I'd like to introduce you to our binding ruler, which will help you finish off your quilts beautifully. What this allows you to do is when you do your binding around any of your projects, it means that if you leave the necessary gaps, I'll talk to you about that as we go, this binding tool will allow you to join both ends up beautifully with a 45-degree angle. So it's really a nice tool to have in your stash. So the first thing to do is you need to measure, in this instance, a 12-inch gap, okay? So you can use your tape measure if you want to, or you can use your quilting ruler, whatever you have handy. So let's just use the tape measure. And actually I know with this particular design it goes from one end of a strip to another, but obviously it doesn't have to be like that. It can be anywhere you like along a straight edge. So the first thing to do is to measure that 12 inches. Like I say, I use my tape measure just to measure that. So it goes from one strip to another. Now, this is where you start stitching your binding. Okay, so I've got my binding here. You're going to leave a 10-inch tail. Okay, so you start with leaving a 10-inch tail, and you start there, and then when you end, you also need a 10-inch tail. All right, so you really want to make sure your binding is long enough before you start. So with the 10 inches, and this time I'll get my quilting ruler in. So the 10 inches is here. So I'm just going to pin that exactly where my pin was for the 12-inch gap. So let's pop that in there. So we start at that point there, leaving that 10-inch tail, and I'm going to put the binding on all the way around until I come to that last pin, and then I stop there and I'll have a 10-inch tail. So all I've done is I've stitched all the way around my little mat here, and I've started here and I finished here. So that should be my 12-inch gap. Well, I know it is. Let me just measure just to make sure. Yep, that's 12 inches. My tails need to be 10 inches long. I know that one's 10 inches long because I measured and cut. So let's measure this one here. So just bring your ruler in, measure it along. I'll just put a little mark in there and I'll just cut that to size. So both tails are now 10 inches long. Okay, so what we need to do to actually get it so these two meet together beautifully and do that gorgeous 45-degree angle is to use our binding tool. So the first thing we need to do is to do the left hand side first. So I'm going to pop my ruler, my binding ruler, underneath my binding here. Okay, so I'm just sort of butting it up to where I finished stitching, and I'm just going to lift my fabric over, my binding fabric over, and I'm just going to mark just here. There's a little line here and it says marking line. Okay, so that's where you do your marking line here. Okay, and what we can do is we can take it all the way along. You can use your ruler if you want to make it nice and straight. And then what we're going to do next is to open this binding up so it's flat. I'll just move it so you can see. So let's just open it up so it's flat. And then I'm just going to extend that line down. I'm doing that by eye. You can use a ruler if you want to. And then what we need to do is to actually cut along this diagonal line here. So if I hold that up so you can see. So I'm popping my ruler on the marking line there. And I'm going to get my rotary cutter. I'm going to cut against this ruler edge here. Okay, so just cut along. You can do this by hand if you want to. So that's our first piece done. And all we have to do now is the other side. So we'll just get that piece out of the way. So once you've had your ruler just like this, this is how we had it before, where you had it butted up against the left hand side. All I want you to do is just rotate it round. So pop your finger on this corner here and just rotate it round So it's a whole 180 degrees all the way through. Now you can butt the ruler up to the right hand side. So again, just like the left hand side, that ruler is now right up against my stitch line there. So you can see, look, that's where it finishes. So we're going to do exactly the same as we did before. So lift your binding over the top of your ruler, and where it says marking line, again what you're going to do is do your mark there, and you can do it all the way across your binding. And what we'll do is we'll just open that binding up. I'll just move it so we've got a little bit of mat room there. Open your binding up so it's flat on your mat, and just extend that line across so you know that's where your marking line is. So all you're going to do now is bring your ruler in, and instead of cutting, so you'd assume that you're going to put that marking line on your marking line. You're not. You're going to grab hold of your ruler and you're going to just slide it down. Okay, so where it says point A here, and it shows quite clearly on your ruler, you butt that up against your mark line. And then this time you're going to cut from here across to here. So what you're making, when you look at it right over the top, it's actually a little square box. So if you see the square box, you know you're going right, because there's that marking line here that we've transferred. So all we need to do now is to cut along that edge. So I'm just going to move the whole piece around so it's easier for me to cut. And you'll probably do the same as this at home. So again, I'm just going to line my ruler up. You don't have to use this ruler to cut. You could use your scissors if you want to, especially if you've already drawn that line. So I've cut my little dog ear off and I'm going straight across my piece. There we go. So now I've cut that. So we don't need the binding tool anymore. We've done the job that it's meant for. We've created our ends there beautifully to make a 45-degree angle. So I've stitched my bias seams together, and you can see that it's joined beautifully. Let me just hold that up so you can see. Done a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. I've gone from edge to edge. So all we need to do now is to actually just sort of prepare that ready for stitching. So all I'm going to do is press my 45-degree angle over to one side. There's no need to open up these seams. And then bring my edges together. There we go. Follow that original fold line of the binding, and there we have it, good to go. So that's going to fit beautifully in that space. So all you're going to do then is to stitch from here to here across the top there. Let's get it straight, and then just flip it like you normally would. So if you look at this side, that's the other side, nice straight run. All you're going to do is iron that binding over, just as you did with the other side, and then take it across to the back of your work. And that's what makes a beautiful binding. And because you've got that beautiful 45-degree there, that again is going to fold over really neatly to give you that really smooth binding effect. Very difficult to do if it hasn't been stitched. So this is our binding tool from Threaders, and that shows you how to do that 12-inch gap. Also on the instructions it also tells you that you can do a 6-inch gap as well, and it holds your hand all the way through. There's your marking line for the 12-inch. There's the marking line for the 6-inch, so it's all there for you. So I hope you enjoy, and I hope your binding is a terrific success.